Good afternoon, good evening. This is CloudChartist with your weekly Ichimoku wrap for the week ending February 24th, 2017. This is the 26th, Sunday afternoon. The markets are going to be opening in about a half hour, so I'm going to try to get this done pretty quickly. Starting off with the ES here, first thing that we notice is the RSI is extremely overbought, but it's been overbought for a few weeks now, so it can always go higher. But it is extended. Price action is extended above the cloud and above the Tenkan-sen and above the Kijun-sen at this point, and like Bollinger Bands, Ichimoku is a system that looks for a reversion to the mean or to equilibrium. The cloud in Ichimoku represents equilibrium, so at some point when things get too extended, they need to come back towards the cloud. We don't have any evidence that that's going to happen imminently. Usually the first indication that we have is one of the either the Tenkan-sen, this blue line here, or the Kijun-sen will go flat. Neither one of those has gone flat yet. They are still pointing upwards, but you can notice that the angle of ascent is slightly less than previously. This angle here was quite strong to the upside, and it's sort of getting a slightly more flattening slightly. We did make a new all-time high on the ES last week. We did put in a close, however, slightly below the high. The high was 2367.50, and we closed at 2364.50, so 3 points below the high. I've been talking about this flat part here in the cloud going into the next few months, all the way into the beginning of May. That suggests this flat shape of the cloud suggests that we could see some sideways price action for that time period, and potentially maybe a small dip and then a continuation higher. That's just what the cloud says could potentially happen. So, but in Ichimoku terms, the ES is bullish in all ways. Let's move on to some other U.S. indexes. Let's look at the Dow next. Dow also made a new high, all-time high. Also looking extended, RSI is overbought as well. Tenkan-sen is starting to level off slightly, but not that much. Same condition with the flat cloud ahead as in the ES. But no real indication that we're going to be pulling back yet. We put in a close just a little bit under the high. The high was 20,817, I think, and we put in a close at 20,777. Nice triple sevens there. But bullish in all ways, Ichimoku. Let's look at the Russell. Russell looking less bullish, more flag-like, and indeed the Tenkan-sen has almost gone flat. It's at a much shallower incline than the other charts that we looked at. If the Tenkan-sen does go flat on the when the new candle opens, it may very well go flat. Then we can expect the potential for a reversion towards the Tenkan-sen to be likely. Tenkan-sen will probably be at around the same level it's at now, but flat 1374. So look for the potential test of a 1374, 1375 area if we do get some reversion back towards the Tenkan-sen. The candle itself from last week was a spinning top type doji, very small candle body, and putting in a outside high and a lower low from the prior candle. So the trend is technically not changed by the last week's candle, so the trend is still up. But it looks like there's some amount of indecision last couple weeks in the Russell, so we could look for some potential sideways action in the Russell. Let's look at the Nasdaq. Nasdaq looking quite bullish, but not as strong as the first two ES and YM that we looked at. Bit of a doji type candle here. We put in a close slightly under the high. The high was 5361.25. We closed at 5342.75 on the Nasdaq. We note also that the Tenkan-sen and the Kijun-sen are flattening out a bit like the other indexes. We still have a flat space in the cloud on this chart as well. And we are overbought again on this RSI with this chart as well. So you can apply what I said about the other charts that look like this to this one. Still, however, quite bullish in Ichimoku terms. Let's move on to some metals. Let's look at gold. Gold saw some quite bullish action as the dollar sold off last week. We're still technically neutral inside the cloud. We did manage to put in a close above the Kijun-sen, which I said was a potential good sign for bulls, or necessary sign for bulls for higher price action. Also significant that we put in a close over this 61.8 fib, I think, with this prior area of prior support, prior resistance, prior support area. So the fact that we put in a close above that is pretty bullish. The Tenkan-sen is coming up, reflecting this bullish price action. So if price action does continue higher inside the cloud, we can expect eventually a bull cross, which is the Tenkan-sen crossing over the Kijun-sen. RSI is pretty neutral on gold for the moment. Let's look at silver. Silver also put in a close above the Kijun-sen after having this spinning top doji type candle stuck at the Kijun-sen last week. We do see that the Chikou over here is coming into the bottom of this candle here, which did offer resistance. So the bottom of this candle was at 1844, and we put in a close at 1841.5. So just a few cents below where this resistance hit at 1844. So I would continue to think that the 1844 level could potentially offer some resistance, and then this week we're going to be over under this candle, and the low here was 1846, so that is also going to continue to be resistance for the Chikou, and so we could see that that level come into play as well as resistance. The Chikou needs to get out from under all of these candles in order for current price action to go higher. That would coincide also with the current price breaking out above the cloud. So even if, or it wouldn't necessarily coincide, it's going to have to get higher above these candle levels in order to really be free to go higher, for price action to be free to go higher. We notice in the shape of the cloud into the future that it is actually becoming more narrow, which suggests potential for a tighter range. And then this cloud up here going into the end of the summer is quite narrow also. So what this cloud shape suggests to me is sideways price action for silver. Let's look at some treasuries. We did see a nice up move in the treasuries last week as the dollar sold off as well. We managed to hold the Tenkan-sen, and we managed to get over and fill this gap here, this prior gap that we were unable to get above and fill. Previous to this, we did actually manage to fill, which sets us up for the potential for higher prices. We can expect there to be potential for resistance, I think, at this level of prior support turned resistance around 155.12-ish, 155.11, something like that. And then we're going to find resistance when the Chikou here runs into the bottom of the cloud here, which is going to be around 159.02. And then also at the Kijun-sen here, which is currently at 159.10. So those can be some areas of potential resistance if we do see continued move to the upside here on the 30-year Treasury bonds. Then we will also have resistance at the cloud here, which would be at 164.11, but that would be a really massive move. I don't expect that to be happening this week, but you never know. It's always good to keep the parameters, in case the move gets going beyond the range that you think it's going, to know what is possible for the next, what to expect next. Let's look at the 10-year ZN. Similar to the ZB chart, we filled this gap that ZN had as well. Put in a close above the gap, put in a close near the highs, and as we continue higher, we can expect to find potential resistance at the Kijun-sen above at 127.030, and then we can expect to find resistance when the Chikou comes into the bottom of the cloud at 128.240. And then, of course, at the cloud up here, 129.240, but that is, pretty far above for the time being. I wouldn't worry about that level but you never know. We shall see. Let's look at the dollar itself. Let's look at it via the yen, like USD, JPY. We see that last week we continued the downtrend that we was initiated at the prior week, as we were unable to get above the Tenkan-sen. Essentially, we're still trading in this range between the Tenkan-sen and the top of the cloud here. We didn't trade all the way down to the bottom of the cloud and test it last week. We could do that potentially this week, so this is the new little nubbin of a candle that's already open. If we do see some more selling, we can expect to potentially find support at the top of the cloud, which is around 111.35, maybe 111.30. Let's call it 111.30. It's not going to tell me exactly at the moment, but 111.30. And then the upside is currently bound by the Tenkan-sen at 115.09. But technically, the dollar yen is still bullish as its price action is still above the cloud on the weekly time frame. Let's look at the DX contract, the dollar futures. We see a similar situation in that there is a range that's delineated by the Tenkan-sen to the upside at 101.50 or 101.50.5, and the Kijun-sen down here at 99.128. We also have a small gap fill below that we could think about potentially. DX does usually fill its gaps eventually. So I'm looking at a range between the Tenkan-sen at 101.50 and the Kijun-sen down here at 99.128 for the dollar, but still bullish in Ichimoku terms. Let's just take a look at one stock chart. Oh, I'm sorry, I completely forgot about crude. My crude people are like not already gave up and have abandoned me. Crude, last week we see that we put in we tested the bottom of this gap window once again and sold almost immediately, found a lot of selling at that level and came down and put in a doji type candle, long-legged type doji candle. The body of the candle is sort of on the lower end of the candle, but the candle was still green, so we did close on the upper end of the candle body itself. If we do get a continued correction to the downside, if this is a potential trend change indication, then we could come down all the way to 52.98, test the Tenkan-sen. Then we have my little trend line here that I need to maybe extend further because I've been watching that as well as a neckline for this potential larger move to the upside. So we just need to keep watching this same 54.90 resistance area until we can actually get through there, and the top end of this gap zone is at 56.50. Let's just take a look at Tesla. Tesla had earnings last week. Pretty emotional time for anybody that was trying to play the earnings. I was standing aside myself. In the after hours after the earnings came out, Tesla moved a lot higher and then proceeded to really sell off significantly. Please ignore all my fib lines on here. So Tesla came in and put in a low of 250.20, which was just above the 249.18 level that I mentioned on Twitter. The Tenkan-sen, we did also have this gap here, which was tested. It seems like the gap was, let's see, the bottom was 251. Yeah, so this gap was tested but not filled on this tiny little gap here. I think that gap actually was maybe I marked on the daily chart. I have so many lines on my Tesla chart, it's not even funny. But one important thing to note, if you're interested in potentially buying the dip on Tesla, the fact that we did hold the Tenkan-sen, this is a really nice buy setup. This pullback to Tenkan-sen looks good for trying to buy the dip. And if we do put in a close below the Tenkan-sen, that would be your sign that it's too early to buy the dip. So you can just keep an eye on that, the Tenkan-sen as your maybe as your stop point if you were trying to get in now. Granted, you know, Tesla's already like $6 higher off of that level, so depending on the size of your account and the amount of risk tolerance you can take, that might be a lot. But this is the weekly time frame that we're talking about here. And that's about all I have to say about Tesla. I'm going to wrap it up here. Hopefully I didn't forget anything else. Thank you for watching my video, and good luck trading this week. If you are not subscribed yet to my YouTube channel and you'd like to be notified when I release new videos, please do subscribe. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them in the comment section below or hit me up on Twitter. Thanks again, and have a great night.